Sophia had always dreamt of beautiful things like true, sincere love, raising caring children, and a cozy family nest, but fate was unkind to this young woman. Sometimes it seemed to her that she bore the heavy burden of spinsterhood, and at times, she contemplated visiting a witch solely due to this absurd misfortune. Unfortunately, Sophia's misfortunes pursued her not only in her personal life. In life, some women find success in their family life, while others rapidly climb the career ladder. Regrettably, Sophia was not lucky in either aspect. By the time she turned 26, she had not yet met her significant other, despite several attempts to start relationships. She also couldn't achieve substantial success in her professional career. Perhaps with parental support that would have encouraged her and provided advice, things might have been different. But, alas, Sophia was an orphan. By education, she was a psychologist and always aspired to help people. She was willing to do so, but not in the way she had envisioned in her student dreams. Working in the field of psychology never materialized. She tried her hand as a waitress, worked in the retail sector, and even attempted to align her life with journalism, writing articles for a children's newspaper. However, her final stop was a position as a sanitation worker in a homeless shelter. This job was far from her dream. Sophia's duties included cleaning up homeless people who were brought in straight from the streets and providing them with beds and clothing. It was a challenging and ungrateful job in which Sophia smelled the stench of dirt and sweat every day. She saw bodies covered in bruises, warts, and scratches. During the winter, she had to deal with frostbitten limbs. Homeless individuals, for the most part, did not appreciate the efforts of Sophia and her colleagues. Many of them arrived at the shelter aggressive and intoxicated, insulting and causing disturbances. They tore up the government-provided bedding and left a mess behind. Throughout her shift, Sophia had no respite and couldn't even enjoy a cup of tea. The other sanitation workers at the shelter didn't take their work too seriously. They made crude jokes, had a relaxed attitude towards their wards, took occasional breaks, smoked cigarettes, and snacked on sandwiches. Sophia, on the other hand, was different. She worked as if the world depended on her efforts, silently and without breaks. She often bit her lip, focusing on her work. Due to her diligence, colleagues, possibly with sympathy or mockery, nicknamed Sofia our Cinderella. Sometimes Sophia overheard coworkers gossiping behind her back, trying to explain why she was so different. She was an orphan and never had the support of a complete family like the others. In their opinion, this could be the reason for Sophia's failures in her personal life. Their conversations hurt Sophia deeply, but she remained silent and politely interacted with all her colleagues, from Aunt Thea, the janitor, to Aunt Holly, the cook, and even the shelter's management. Biting her lip, she simply carried out her work without complaints or claims. The other sanitation workers at the shelter didn't take their work too seriously. They made crude jokes, had a relaxed attitude towards their wards, took occasional breaks, smoked cigarettes, and snacked on sandwiches. Sophia, on the other hand, was different. She worked as if the world depended on her efforts, silently and without breaks. She often bit her lip, focusing on her work. After a grueling shift at the shelter, Sophia usually stopped at a store on her way home. The young woman always bought the same things: cheese, a bottle of kefir, white bread, and some canned goods. She knew how to cook but did it without much pleasure. Having dinner alone, she often savored bites of herring in tomato sauce, but still felt the bitter loneliness that enveloped her every evening. Sophia sighed repeatedly, thinking, maybe my colleagues are right. Maybe I am truly inadequate. Even on New Year's, fate did not have any joyful surprises in store for Sophia. She celebrated the holiday alone, sitting in front of the television, sipping a glass of champagne, listening to the chimes broadcast on TV. But could this be considered a celebration? She drank champagne, ate a store-bought salad and herring under a fur coat, and then, concealing her tears in her pillow, she fell asleep. Sophia's heart was breaking. Why? Why am I left alone? Yes, maybe my colleagues were right, I am inadequate. Waking up on the first day of the new year, Sophia remembered how she had cried the day before, wiped her swollen eyes, and came to the conclusion that she simply needed to live, accepting life as it is. She needed to cast aside all empty dreams and worries about the future. When my end comes, that's when I'll rest. Let them bury me at the public's expense. After all, I'm doing a noble deed, taking care of the homeless, she decided. Sophia quickly pulled herself together, made breakfast, and headed to work. The shelter was within walking distance of her home, which was very convenient. Wet snow was falling on the street, turning into mud on the asphalt. The weather did not match the festive mood at all. People hurried past on the streets as if they didn't notice a motionless body lying on the roadside. Sophia noticed something black in a recess and stopped. It was a jacket worn by a man lying face down. Passers-by paid no attention to him and continued on their way. Sophia stood there for nearly a minute, unable to take her eyes off the man on the ground. I need to help, she told herself. She squatted down and tried to wake the man, gently nudging him. Hello, sir, are you okay? She asked, but the man didn't respond. With effort, Sophia turned him onto his back and noticed that he was breathing. He appeared to be no older than 35. What a beautiful face, crossed Sophia's mind, but she quickly pushed those thoughts away. I need to think about saving a person, not the beauty of his face, she scolded herself internally. Standing up, she shouted, someone, help, in the hope of attracting the attention of passers-by. But the passers-by continued to hurry past, paying no attention to what was happening. Some even looked at Sophia and the man on the ground with mockery, as if saying, look at that fool, getting involved with some dying homeless guy. People, what's wrong with you? Sophia wondered. We may consider ourselves inadequate, but we care about the lives of others. Meanwhile, those who think they're smart, successful, and important just walk on by, caring only about their sandwiches and their work. Sophia realized that this was not the time for philosophical pondering. Not the time for that, she told herself. She decided to try to lift the man, but it proved to be a difficult task as he was quite heavy. I need help, Sophia shouted again, hoping that someone would eventually pay attention. But even this cry did not catch the passers-by's notice. All right, to hell with all of you, she cursed at the people, I'll handle this on my own. Sophia dragged the man like a sack. Where am I actually taking this poor soul? It would have been more logical to call an ambulance, she thought, becoming completely flustered. At this moment, the man began to regain consciousness. Where am I? He asked. You're on the street. Sophia gave him an obvious answer. Where do you live? Where are your loved ones? Can you call them? The man tried to get up but failed. Leave me, young lady, he pleaded. How can I leave you? Do you want to freeze on the street? Sophia replied. It seems to be my fate, the man said bitterly. Shall I call an ambulance for you? Sophia asked. Why? A bitter, ironic chuckle escaped from the man. Then he coughed and added, will the ambulance patch me up so I freeze longer? Don't you have a home? No, I have nothing at all, except for the clothes I'm wearing. I've lost everything, the man replied. So, you're homeless? Sophia asked. That's putting it mildly, the man grimly smirked again. Our client, Sophia thought. Get up, I won't leave you to die, Sophia firmly declared and began dragging the man toward the shelter. Leave me be, the man resisted. Why do you need me? Please, just be quiet, Sophia snapped. 10 minutes later, she rang the shelter's doorbell. What's going on? The drowsy guard, Uncle Wright, appeared. Picked him up from the street, Sophia said. He was freezing. Together with Uncle Wright, Sophia dragged the man into the reception area. The shelter's staff were already bustling in the hallway, the technician, the cook, the sanitation workers, and the doctors. So, Sophia, my dear, found yourself a groom. Aunt Thea, the janitor, joked crudely, nodding toward the man in the black jacket. What groom? He was freezing on the street, Sophia replied seriously. The janitor's joke was picked up by others, and soon the entire floor was discussing how Cinderella had found herself a prince. We just need to wash this groom well and shave his armpits, Aunt Holly, the cook, joked, always considering herself a humorist. Sophia was deeply hurt to the point of tears. She had saved a person, and her colleagues were making fun of her misfortune and her loneliness. She recalled the wise words from a social network, never laugh at pain you haven't experienced yourself. Yes, even on the internet, you could find insightful thoughts. In the reception room, the gloomy Dr. Marvin cast a glance at the new arrival. Where did he come from? The doctor asked. I picked him up from the street, he was freezing, Sophia explained. Marvin snorted. As if we don't have enough homeless people here. Does your protege have a name? Blake, the man struggled to say. My name is Blake. And I'm Sophia, the young woman introduced herself for some reason. Marvin made a clicking sound and said, Sophia, you're not on a dating website. And you, Blake, undress. To my underwear. The man inquired. Take off your underwear too. I need to examine you, the doctor replied. Doctor, perhaps you can let me go, and I'll be on my way. Why bother with a doomed man? Blake requested. What's with the chatter? The doctor exclaimed indignantly. Why, Sophia, did you bring him here for no reason? I'm telling you, undress. Blake, apparently embarrassed, slowly undressed. Marvin scrutinized the patient critically from all angles and let out a satisfied huff. Well, no frostbite, you're just frozen. the doctor concluded. So, can I be on my way? Blake asked, still struggling with his speech. That's out of the question, the doctor objected. Get dressed, Sophia will take you to the rest area. Let's go, the girl said, taking Blake by the arm. As they walked down the hallway, they heard the voices of the sanitation workers. Look, our Cinderella is marching with her groom. They say there aren't enough princes for everyone. Sophia shrank back, feeling uncomfortable with their mockery. It seems they're making fun of you because of me, Blake whispered quietly. Yes, don't pay attention to it, Sophia replied curtly. But still, Blake said, it would have been better if you introduced me to your own fate. Are you tired of living? Angrily, Sophia asked, what did you say? Don't ever say that. Everyone has to live. Wow, you're quite feisty, Blake mumbled and didn't attempt to start a conversation with Sophia again. Sophia led Blake to a room where homeless people slept on bunk beds. There was an available spot for Blake as well. She handed him a fresh set of pajamas and bed linens, and Blake lay down on his bed. You're right, Sophia, he said. Before I die, I'll at least get a proper night's sleep. You know, when I was wandering the streets, I could hardly sleep. How long were you on the streets? Sophia asked. A month, Blake replied. Sophia was horrified. On average, homeless people lie for about 3 years, Blake said, so I still had plenty of time to live, and he chuckled. That's not a laughing matter, Sophia sternly said before leaving the room. Throughout the day, Sophia's colleagues discussed her and Blake, calling them Cinderella and the Prince. The most spiteful of them would say, Sophia isn't lucky with fiancés. She found a homeless man on the street and dragged him into the shelter. Sophia tried to ignore the malicious gossip of her coworkers, but in truth, she also thought about Blake. He only recently became homeless. I wonder how he ended up on the streets. It doesn't seem like he's an alcoholic who drank away his apartment. And the way Blake resisted being saved. He doesn't seem to want to live, does he? Sophia wondered. Finally, Blake seemed like an interesting and intelligent man, quite unlike the typical shelter resident. In the middle of the shift, Sophia went to check on him. Blake was already awake, sitting on his bed, looking much better than in the morning. Hello, Sophia, Blake greeted her. When the young woman met her senior colleague, she tried to maintain a stern tone and said, we saw each other today. Despite her attempt to sound formal, there was a sincere desire to express gratitude in her words. But I still want to greet you, my savior. How are you feeling? Sophia asked. The woman saved replied, thank you, splendid. I'll bring you some food. Sophia headed to the kitchen. Then, trying to maintain her indifference, she asked Aunt Holly, the cook, for a portion for the new patient. Aunt Holly couldn't resist making a joke. I bet it's for your new beau. Sophia gave a grim nod in response and took a tray of food. The tray held a bowl of aromatic buckwheat porridge, a plate of beet salad, a cup of tea, along with a spoon and a buttered sandwich. Sophia brought this tray back to Blake, who gratefully accepted it and started eating. After finishing the meal, Blake returned the tray to Sophia and expressed his gratitude. You know, I've dined in the finest restaurants, but I've never eaten as deliciously and eagerly as today. Sophia responded with her customary seriousness, this is a standard portion. You will eat like this every day now. Blake smiled and said, it will be even more enjoyable if you bring me the food, Sophia. Sophia slightly changed her tone, saying, I brought you food as an exception. You can use your legs to get to the cafeteria. Blake responded with a smile, as you wish, Sophia. I don't need any privileges. As they parted, Sophia added with a hint of softness, goodbye, try to get some more sleep. In response to Blake's words of gratitude, he offered her a riddle. An archer on a hunt shot a gazelle. The arrow pierced the gazelle's leg and came out through its ear. How could this happen? However, Sophia wasn't ready for a new riddle and expressed her irritation, saying, oh, don't torment me with your riddles, before leaving the room, visibly annoyed. Later in the evening, Sophia found herself having microwave-heated dumplings for dinner. Her thoughts drifted back to Blake. An interesting man, she admitted to herself. Where did he learn that riddle about the archer and the gazelle? Sophia also remembered that riddle. She had a slight interest in literature and history, and she knew that this riddle had been posed by the Turkic Sultan Hussein Bey Kara to his subjects. Only the great poet and thinker had managed to solve it. The answer was simple. The gazelle had lifted its leg to scratch its ear just as the archer released the arrow, causing it to pass through the leg and pierce the ear. Only a highly intellectual person would know such a riddle, Sophia concluded. However, she couldn't shake the question of how Blake ended up on the streets. I need to ask him, Sophia thought. She still couldn't bring herself to admit that she was interested in Blake as a man. She knew all too well how easily one could get burned in relationships. On the other hand, having an interest in a homeless man she had literally picked up from the street and brought to the shelter seemed absurd and even shameful. After having dinner and falling asleep, Sophia entered a dream where she found Blake. Together, they strolled along the seashore, picking up beautiful pebbles and seashells. Then they headed to a restaurant where, incredibly, they were served buckwheat porridge with a beet salad, exactly the same dishes Sophia had brought to Blake on his tray earlier that day. In the morning, Sophia arrived at work, where Aunt Holly and Aunt Thea immediately teased her, saying, "Well, did you miss your prince?" Uncle Wright, the security guard, added, "Your groom is in the workshop." In the workshop, Sophia was surprised. The shelter had a workshop for assembling boxes to involve homeless individuals in productive work. They were compensated with a small wage for their efforts. This work was voluntary, and it often took a lot of persuasion to convince former wanderers to participate, as the money earned could be spent on substances, which was undesirable. However, Blake displayed his uniqueness once again. Instead of taking a few days to rest after a month of living on the streets, he went straight to the workshop. Midday, Sophia made a visit there under some pretext and found Blake engrossed in assembling boxes. Upon seeing the nurse, he instantly stopped working and greeted her with a friendly smile. "Hello, Sophia, and here I thought you wouldn't come to visit me," Blake said cheerfully. Sophia responded with a hint of surprise, "Am I obligated to visit you?" Ignoring the slight sharpness in Sophia's question, Blake asked, "So, have you solved my riddle about the archer and the gazelle?" Sophia replied without a smile, "Very simple. The gazelle lifted its leg to scratch its ear, and the arrow, when it pierced the leg, went through the ear." Blake applauded like a child and exclaimed, "Bravo." Then Sophia suddenly noticed, "By the way, I know who Ake is. A wonderful poet, don't you think?" Blake confirmed, "Wonderful." Soon after, Sophia left the workshop. Later, Aunt Thea, who was cleaning the floors, playfully asked Sophia, "So, how's your groom?" Sophia just shrugged, dismissing this intrusive question. After work, Sophia prepared a light dinner for herself, consisting of a salad and a couple of sausages, but thoughts of Blake came back to her. She wondered, am I being too harsh on him? She thought, after all, he hasn't done anything to me. He wants to be friends, understandably, as I was the one who saved him, so he naturally gravitates towards me. It seems like I'm getting angry at Blake just because they've dubbed us groom and bride, which is silly. Sophia made a decision, I'll do something nice for Blake. With that thought, she went to sleep. In the morning, after getting herself ready, she picked a volume of Ake's poems from her bookshelf and tucked it into her purse before heading to work. What a pleasant man, Sophia thought about Blake. She admitted to herself that she hadn't had such enjoyable company in a long time as with Blake, this unconventional homeless man. None of her numerous exes had been such a sensible conversationalist, so witty, attentive, and considerate. Sophia even stopped getting upset about her colleagues' crude jokes about Cinderella and the tramp, the groom, and the bride. And why not? It wouldn't be bad to have such a wonderful groom, the girl told herself. Blake remained a mystery to Sophia. She didn't know the main thing. How did he end up on the streets? Did he ever have a family? Why didn't he turn to his relatives for help when he lost his shelter? Does it really matter? The main thing is that he is a good, kind person, Sophia reassured herself. Sometimes, bold dreams engulfed Sophia. In them, Blake earned a lot of money in the workshop, restored his passport, and then they moved into her apartment together, got married, and a year later, they had a child. But she quickly shattered these dreams, reminding herself that she was accustomed to getting burnt by men. Over time, Sophia decided to simply enjoy her time with Blake without making any plans. 3 weeks had passed. One day, Sophia was helping Aunt Holly in the kitchen, doing dishes when she suddenly saw Blake. It was unusual because he usually didn't come into the kitchen, especially at odd hours. "Hello," Sophia said, feeling a slight embarrassment. "Hello, Sophia," Blake replied with a joyful smile. "I have good news. Today they paid me some money for my cardboard boxes." "Is that so?" "Congratulations," Sophia smiled. "Yes, today is the payday for the workshop employees," Blake explained. Blake, apparently, wasn't bothered at all by Aunt Holly's presence, to whom he politely nodded. "Do you happen to have the day off tomorrow?" Blake asked. "Yes," Sophia admitted. "It's a day off. So, allow me, charming lady, to invite you for a cup of coffee," Blake proposed, improving his manners. Aunt Holly, shifting her gaze from Blake to Sophia, chuckled. "What?" The girl didn't understand. "Aunt Holly, she made a joke," Blake explained. I'm inviting you for a cup of coffee at a cafe. No need, Sophia replied, feeling flustered. Nevertheless, lady, I insist. I want to at least thank you for saving my life, Blake insisted. You don't have to, really, the orderly repeated. There's a park nearby, Blake said, seemingly not hearing Sophia's refusal. I'll wait for you tomorrow at 12 by the main gates. Well, now I need to get back to the workshop. Aunt Holly watched him leave and burst into laughter. Then she turned to the orderly. So, Sophia, will you go on a date with your prince? It's none of your business. The girl suddenly flared up and also left the kitchen, leaving the dishes unwashed. Aunt Holly had a loose tongue, and soon the entire shelter staff was talking about the upcoming date between Blake and Sophia. Everyone gave the young woman mocking advice on how to behave on the date with Blake. Only Aunt Thea, dragging her mop at the end of her shift, said, yes, Sophia won't go on a date with this Blake, she doesn't have the spirit for it. And yet, I will go, Sophia thought when her inner conflict got the best of her. Why shouldn't I go on a date with a man? I am such a pushover, after all. However, when Sophia returned home, her resolve weakened. To go or not to go, maybe I'll consult the daisy. As always, Sophia had a light salad for dinner and couldn't decide whether to go on a date with Blake. Okay, the morning is wiser than the evening. I'll just wake up tomorrow and decide, she decided. Sophia went to bed without setting an alarm on her phone. She woke up at 11 a.m., and there was only an hour left until her appointment with Blake. For a modern girl, this might seem too little time to get ready. However, Sophia decided not to rush and relaxed, thinking, if Blake really wants to meet me, he'll wait for me. She spent her morning in a cozy routine, taking a shower, having breakfast, drinking a cup of tea, putting on makeup, and choosing her outfit. When she left the house, it was already noon. Probably, Blake didn't wait for me, Sophia thought. He wouldn't stand in the cold for half an hour. However, to her surprise, Blake stood at the entrance to the park, smiling, and he held a bouquet of brightly colored roses in his hands. Sophia, I'm glad to see you, Blake said, and the girl felt guilty for her delay. So, you waited for me for half an hour, Blake? Sophia asked. Did you freeze? I walked briskly in circles, and I didn't freeze at all, Blake replied, still smiling. A real man, the girl thought as Blake handed her the bouquet of roses. These roses are for you, Sophia. The young woman accepted the flowers with gratitude and smiled at Blake. Well, let's not stand out in the cold any longer, Blake suggested. Let's go to the cafe. They headed to the Cozy Forest Cafe located in the park. Blake and Sophia took a table by the window, and the man ordered 2 cups of aromatic milk coffee. The conversation started smoothly and pleasantly. Blake discussed poetry, flowers, and interesting movies. What a wonderful conversationalist, Sophia marveled to herself. Unbeknownst to her, she started telling him about her life, how she grew up in an orphanage, how she became interested in Eastern literature, and how she had been unlucky in her relationships with men. Blake listened attentively and was tactful in his questions. Sophia felt like she wanted to talk to this person, and talk a lot. It seems like you're tired, Blake remarked. Allow me to walk you to your building. Sophia agreed, and they left the cafe together. Farewelling Blake and already crossing the threshold of her apartment, Sophia suddenly realized that she had missed an important moment. Why didn't I ask him how he ended up on the street? That's so strange. The next day at work, everyone talked about one thing: Cinderella on a date with a homeless man. Aunt Holly had clearly tried her best when Blake offered to meet Sophia. Colleagues were playing out a drama, but inside Sophia, there was a protest. Why shouldn't I have the right to go on a date with a man? Sophia kept silent, but her gaze proudly conveyed, so what if he's a shelter resident? He's polite and gallant. Sophia realized that yesterday's date might have been the best in her life. She had experience with princes and princesses who needed attention and were afraid of offending. But Blake wasn't a prince, he was a true gentleman. Sophia headed to the workshop, knowing that Blake worked there. A real man was assembling boxes when she entered. Hello, Sophia greeted joyfully. Hello, Sophia, Blake replied instantly. Are you still assembling boxes? Sophia asked, smiling. Yes, I enjoy working with my hands, Blake replied, smiling back. And I need the money. What do you need the money for? Sophia asked, still smiling. To take one charming lady to a cafe. Blake looked at Sophia, slightly perspiring. We're planning to meet after work, right? If you insist, Sophia replied. Let's switch to you. I'm glad. Sophia became so bold that before leaving the workshop, she gave Blake an airy kiss. For 2 weeks, the shelter staff couldn't stop discussing the relationship between Sophia and Blake. Even the homeless residents of the shelter joined the discussions, either with intrusive curiosity or a hint of irony. But for Sophia, it no longer mattered. She honestly admitted to herself, "I like this man," and decided that on their next date, she would definitely take Blake for an honest conversation to learn about his past and where he came from.